Ivan, you are a dear friend, and it's good to have you here today.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you so much.
In fact, I've been looking forward to this for some time. We've done this with several of the artists, and we've said from the very beginning we have got to have a chance to let all of the friends who have got to know you through the videos get to know you better.
Well, it's like after 15 years of being on the homecoming videos, it's about time they get to know me. So this is a great opportunity.
Are you ready for some of the real tough questions?
Yeah, I think so. Go ahead.
If you talk about gospel music, you have to talk about Atlanta.
Yeah,
So much history there.
absolutely.
But you might also want to talk about Memphis just a little bit, wouldn't you?
Oh, hey, Memphis is like the heart of so much music that came through. And I've enjoyed going to Memphis for years.
And not only Southern gospel music, but black gospel music. There's
Yeah.
such a heritage there. Rhythm and blues, B.B. King, Elvis.
Elvis, yeah, yeah. Ivan Parker.
I may have met you before the day in the hotel, but at least it registered for me.
Yeah.
I think you said I'd met you sometime earlier, wasn't it?
We actually met for the very first time at one of the Dove Awards.
Huh.
And I was actually there when I was singing with Gold City. We were nominated for some award. And Michael English brought you over and said, I want you to meet some of my friends. And as Michael was introducing everybody, you just kind of just waved at everybody. And then when it got to me, you shook my hand and said, man, you got some great pipes. And the quartet was mad at me for several years after that.
Well, my mind goes off on all kind of crazy ways that I cannot always be responsible for what my mouth says. So,
Well, hey, it worked. It made me feel good.
but then later on, I do remember, and I think Michael was probably the one again who said, a lot of people don't know Michael, but he's very, very generous. I mean, he wasn't a competitor with you or you a competitor with him.
Right.
He did a different kind of thing than you did.
Exactly.
But he said, Bill, I do want you to spend some time and get to know Ivan. He's really a good kid.
And I remember going to the hotel room, and as you came out and reintroduced ourselves again, you said, you know what? First thing out of your mouth was, and your name is, and I said, Ivan Parker. And you told me about Gloria having to wear a name tag for all those years. And it was kind of interesting because you said, well, let's sing a little bit.
Yeah.
And I remember we sang He Touched Me and Because He Lives. And we just sort of just had our own little time right there in the hotel room and just had fun.
Yeah.
And you had a chance to hear me sing and plus just had fun singing.
And also, it was a time of saying, what do you want to do when you grow up? What are your dreams? I don't know how many times I've asked that question to young kids. What do you want to do when you grow up?
Sing, baby, sing. That's all I've ever wanted to do.
Yeah.
Since I was a little kid growing up, I'd get close to a bus and smell that diesel.
And you wanted to sing.
Oh, I just wanted to get on that bus and sing.
North Carolina has produced a lot of great talent in the gospel music field. Where in North Carolina?
Actually, I was born in Roanoke Rapids. My dad pastored.
And that's close to where?
Roanoke Rapids is not too far from Raleigh.
Yeah.
And
Great area.
Yeah, so we lived kind of in and around the Raleigh area pretty much all my life. And then Dad, he pastored some little small churches around North Carolina, and so we moved to Dunn, North Carolina, then a little place called Broadway, North Carolina.
Who were your early influences when you first started singing?
Well, all my brothers, my family sang, and my
The Parker
dad,
family?
Yes, my dad, he played the guitar and sang and actually got the kids started. And by him pastoring all these churches, I guess that gave us the place to sing, So Dad really had his own homecoming choir as well.
Yeah.
And so we sang together as a family. And so I guess they would have been my influence at that really young age. But
And you learned to sing parts early
I did.
because you had to.
And that was from listening to Statesman records and Blackwood Brothers and the Bill Gaither Trio, all these records that I actually was able to learn how to divide and figure out the parts. And so I was singing harmony at 4 or 5 years old.
Your first job professionally was with the Singing Americans, right?
Yes, absolutely.
We have a picture of that.
Oh my.
And the personnel of that first group would have been?
That very first group was the Singing Americans. That was my first full-time job, and an old legendary gentleman by the name of Ed Hill,
Yeah.
that sang with the Prophets years ago. He
So-
had come in and started managing the group and singing baritone, and he called me out of the blue one day and said, "Man, we'd love
Because
for you
he'd
to sing."
seen you singing with your family.
Right. Yeah, and somebody had called him and said, "You need to go hear this kid
Hear
sing."
this kid.
And that's just kind of where
And
it
who was the
started.
tenor?
Danny Funderburk.
Danny.
Danny
What a
Funderburk.
character.
Yeah, and that was actually it was funny because Danny had not been singing very long as well,
Yeah.
and so that was the first time I'd ever met Danny, and Dwayne Burke sang the bass, and
Yeah.
just a little old kid, and Ed Hill, of course, sang baritone.
And then after Singing Americans, you're with Gold City, right?
Right, right.
And how many years were you with them?
I was with Gold City for 11 years. Yeah.
That's a long tenure.
Yeah, especially for one group to stay together that long.
Yeah.
You kind of
And it was
unusual.
you and Brian Free and Mike Lefebvre in the first years,
And Tim Riley.
and Tim Riley. And then later on, another baritone.
A gentleman by the name of Steve Lacey
Yeah.
came with us later, a big guy.
Do you still stay in touch with him? See him from time to time?
Actually, I do. We're all very close, still
Yeah.
real good friends,
Yeah.
and you know, and it's kind of neat after all these years. I mean, we basically grew up together. Those 11 years we were together, and so we still, call each other all the time. If we're passing through town, we'll stop and eat together. You know, it's fun.
Do you miss singing in a group? Three guys?
You know, I wished I had $1 for every time somebody asks me that question. Yeah, I do. I mean, there are those times. I think once a quartet man, you're always a quartet man, and you love making the harmony. You love singing the arrangements. You love doing all that stuff. Whenever I left the quartet and started the solo ministry, I think God had taken me to a point to where it's like, okay, here's another avenue I have for you. You know, you've always enjoyed these adventures that I've given you. Let me give you another adventure. And He allowed me to be able to have this solo ministry that I do, and I have really adjusted to this well. I mean, I'm having fun with it, and I really don't have any complaints. Because see, that's the joy of doing the homecoming videos, because you know, if you've watched enough of these videos, you see how Bill Gaither puts these things together, and he puts this one with this one, and he'll pull a tenor and a lead and a baritone from here and there. Next thing you know, you've got one of the finest quartets you've ever heard.
So you have never quit singing with the quartet, huh?
I really haven't. I really haven't. And so I've enjoyed singing with the groups, the quartets, as trio, and still do the solo ministry too. I've got the best of it all. I love every minute of it.
Someone has said a good song is a good song is a good song, and when you find a good song, it's a jewel in it.
Oh, you know what? Songs are so important.
Yeah.
I mean, they really are. And I've loved the writers
Yeah.
of songs and what has inspired them over the years to just come up with this idea. And Dallas Holmes was one of my favorite songwriters.
And not only a good songwriter, but just a great person with a wonderful, great heart, wonderful marriage, wonderful family.
Yeah.
I can remember when we were going to do this one here again. I said, I know the guy can sing this song.
You always had a knack of picking songs for artists. You've always done well there.
And we did that particular song down at Indianapolis at the Indiana Roof. It was really a cozy gathering, a lot of artists there.
Yeah.
But there's nothing like getting a lot of great charged artists in the same room with a good singer and a good song. And this thing came uncorked that day.
It really did. You know, there's certain moments that happen through a lot of these videos, that times that you'll never forget. Yeah. And whenever we were doing Rise Again, the Spirit just came into that place, and everybody was singing, had their hands in the air. I mean, just worshiping God. And I tell you, it was just an incredible time that we were able to come together as the church.
You know, the Gaither Trios had a lot of different personnel from the beginning. It was my sister and brother and I, and then later on Gloria and Danny and I, and then later on Gary and Danny and I. And then Gloria said to me, why don't you just go with the vocal band and do your thing? But from time to time, we try to put together the Bill Gaither Trio, and we did it on a video I think called "Joy in the Camp." And I said, Ivan, why don't you come up here and sing the lead on this song?
Yeah, and I was scared to death. I was like, me? But you know, it was great because I had the chance to actually live a dream. Because I mean, I really hate to go here with this, but whenever I was a kid,
Yeah.
used to listen to the Bill Gaither Trio, never thinking that I'd ever have a chance to sing with them, and so this was an honor.
Well, had I known you were around on some of those times we did some replacements, I think I'd have paid a little closer attention.
Yeah.
I often say to some of the people who are in this field, be very careful of those little kids who are running around. Go sooner or later.
Sooner or later. Yeah, sooner or later they'll show up.
And you were one of them.
I was, but you know, that was a great night that we did that song on the video, because I remember looking back and reviewing the video after we had done it, and I was sitting there one night on the bus before the concert, and I was watching us as we were singing and watching how it affected all the other singers in the room that night, and the tears just were flowing whenever we sang that song, and I thought, yes, I'm finally with a hit group.
It was a joy.
It was.
People always want to know who are the folks behind these guys who scrub up real good and clean up real good and sing. Gloria and I both love your wife, Teresa. She's a sweetheart.
I do too.
That's good. When did you meet her? How long have you been married?
We were actually we met right out of high school, and it was pretty much love at first sight.
And from your hometown then?
Yeah, she was from Raleigh, and the big city.
Yeah.
And where I grew up was about 30 miles out of Raleigh, a little country town. And we actually went to trade school together, learning computers.
Yeah.
And I met her there, and I didn't learn anything about computers, but I found out how to fall in love. And so we fell in love at that point. And I remember years ago, she did ask, she says, now, Ivan, she said, now, I want to marry you, but you got to make me one promise. And I said, well, what would that be? And she said, you've got to promise me you'll never go full time singing on the road. and I said, sure, not a problem.
But you want to make sure that you had her hooked.
Yeah, well, I had to have her name on a piece of paper before. And then as we went along, the opportunities came, and she realized pretty quick this was my calling.
Yeah.
And this was what I was supposed to do. And so she really proved to me how much she loved me by allowing me to go do this.
She's a very, very supportive wife.
Yeah.
And you got two great boys.
Oh, so proud of them. My oldest son, Ryan, actually he finished school at the University of Texas, and he married a young lady there, Sandy Hagee, which is John Hagee's daughter.
Yeah.
And they blessed us this year with a beautiful little girl, Olivia Jordan, and she is just a beautiful, beautiful little thing.
Grandpa Ivan.
God, that don't even sound right. We might need to edit that one.
Grandpa Ivan.
Yeah.
That's great.
But somebody even asked me one time, says, well, Ivan, how does it feel to be a granddad? I said, I really don't have anything to compare it to. I don't know. And then my youngest son, Joshua, and Joshua's 18. He's actually going to Cumberland University right out of Nashville. And he's got the music bug. He's wanting to do the music thing, play guitar and sing and do all of this. So
God bless him.
I know. I pray over him every day, Bill. But he is a great young man as well. And I'm so blessed. I cannot count my blessings enough when it comes to my family, because I know that a lot of my success is due to a loving family that has supported, because being on the road so much all of these years, they've stood behind me, and I think they've received the call as well as myself.
You know, there are a lot of great lead singers in the Southern Gospel field. James Blackwood, certainly one. Jake Hess, obviously, certainly one. But one that came along before your time was a guy by the name of Smitty Gatlin. Now, I'm an old historian, so I know.
Yeah.
But Smitty had a smooth, second tenor lead
Yes, he
voice
did.
for the Oak Ridge Boys.
Yeah.
And he sang a song that I brought to you. Remember that?
I remember that well.
No one cared
I
for.
sure do, because whenever I was a kid growing up, I remember my mom and dad bought a Smitty Gatlin Trio record
Yeah.
and brought it home, and so we listened to it all the time, and this song was on there. So when you brought it to me, I had totally forgot about this tune, and whenever you brought it to me, it just brought back some of those great old memories that I guess we all love, to walk down memory lane, and this took me way back.
For those who are trying to get a peek into your life and into life on the road, Howard and Vestal always had a bus that in fact, we called it after the concert, the Goodman Cafe. There was always good food there. However, your driver has come along. What's his name?
Leland.
Leland.
Everybody loves Leland.
Everybody loves Leland because not only is he a good, safe driver, he is a good cook, right?
The man can cook.
And now the Parker Cafe is open after the concert.
Yeah, it's a revolving door on my bus, and
You'll see Ronnie and Michael Booth coming in. Penrod's always over.
yeah, he's always over there, and Jeff Easter especially. I can't seem to get rid of him. and they're always coming to the bus wanting to know what's for supper tonight.
What's his specialty that he makes? Is it chili soup that he makes so good?
Taco soup.
Taco soup.
Oh, that's everybody's favorite.
Yeah.
You know, that's a great after concert meal. Taco soup. Something great to lay down on.
A lot of wonderful memories out there on the road. Any particular memory that stands out in your mind?
I would have to say that probably the one that stood out the most would be when 9/11 happened. We were actually doing Quartet Convention that week in Louisville, Kentucky, and on that particular Tuesday that happened. And then we went to Pittsburgh
On Saturday night.
on Saturday night to do a homecoming concert. Yeah. And that night, we were just, before the concert, you gathered us all together. Yeah. I love these moments.
Yeah.
You gathered us all together, and we sat around and we remembered the people in prayer. We thought about the families that were all involved in all of what happened that particular day.
And the one plane had gone down not far from Pittsburgh.
That's right. That's exactly right. And I had some close friends that I even called to make sure they were okay. Mm. And that night, you said, just let's think about what we're going to do tonight, and let's make it as effective, because there was a lot of healing that needed to take place that night. And I happened to have a soundtrack of that Statue of Liberty. Mm-hmm. And I said, Bill, would it be okay if we sang this one tonight? Yeah. And you said, by all means. And we sang the Statue of Liberty for those folks in Pittsburgh that night. And by the time we were one sentence into the verse, the people were standing.
With their lights.
With their lights. and we were on stage as patriotic and as proud as we've ever stood that night. And we all sang Statue of Liberty together. And, you know, because the first verse in New York Harbor stands a lady, and that's where it all happened. Yeah. But that particular night, Statue of Liberty meant more to me than any song I think I'd ever sang in my life.
You know, many times we don't realize how much we miss something until there's a possibility of it being taken away. And boy, freedom that night became very, very important, right?
Freedom stood tall.
People look at folks like you and like me, like any of us up there, and think, man, they got it made. You know, I mean, somehow they just think that you don't go through any tough times. Has it been easy for you?
I could write a book, and I may do that. It has been an experience that I think, thinking back on it now, if I'd have known how hard it was going to be to get to this point, I don't know that I'd have had the energy to do it. And so I think that's one of the reasons God allows us to be able to experience a piece of it at a time, you know. But it's It's been a very enjoyable trip. I have just enjoyed so much making this journey. And whenever I think about some of those nights, the bus broke down on the side of the interstate, and I think about 100,000 miles a year is what we travel, and 175, 200 concerts a year. That's a lot of singing, a lot of traveling, but it's worth it. It really is. Whenever you stand on that stage, and you look at how those people are loving you back. I never sing to myself when I'm on stage. I sing to these people. I've heard myself sing before, and I'm not my biggest fan. But these people out here, there's a song, there's a message that they need to hear at that particular time, and I think that's one of the things that God has allowed me to experience, to be able to overcome some of the rough times, the valleys, the tough stuff that it takes to be where we are. That segment of 2 hours on stage that I get to spend one-on-one with those people, that is the most heavenly, the most wonderful time that I could spend in my lifetime, because somebody out there in that audience is needing to hear that message. And I believe that some of them are even at the point to where maybe they're about to give up. Maybe they're about to turn loose of that rope. And if I could help them, if I could throw them a line in a song that would just encourage them, that's what it means to me. That's what makes all the valleys light up. That's what makes it seem like it's really not a valley. And I just love every minute of it.
Do you ever get discouraged?
I do. I'm human. There's some of those times out there. I don't let myself get to the point to where I'm real discouraged, but I do get frustrated at times. And there's some of those things out there that come our way as Christians that really are discouraging, but you just press on.
Do you get criticized?
Yeah, I do. Not very often, but there are those times whenever, as a Christian, you get criticized for maybe the way you wear your hair, or maybe a particular outfit that you got on. Trivial things. For some odd reason, it means something to somebody out there that wants to make a big deal out of it. And there are some of those out there that don't like a lot of the versatile styles of music. I think God works in all of us in different ways, and I think it makes all of us to make this whole thing come together and make it one piece of pie. And so that's why I enjoy singing a contemporary song. I enjoy singing a little country tune here and there, or Southern gospel. It doesn't matter. As long as
Music's music.
As long as it's just that good music that people can identify with.
Ivan, the thing that's encouraging me about you is that you don't have a narrow vision when it comes to music. I'll never forget when you came to me and said, there's a song in the contemporary field that is wonderful, and I think our people would like it. And I got to tell you, you took it to a whole bunch of folks who might have normally not liked it, just coming from the contemporary field. Although Mercy Me's rendition of it is just wonderful.
It sure is.
But I loved your vision at that point. It's been a good song for you, Heather.
It really has. And see, it, about any time you start singing songs about heaven, you really touch a vein, I think, with a lot of Christian people. And whenever you think about all these homecoming legends, these wonderful people that we have fell in love with, all the video people, it's great whenever you think about where they are today. And it's really combined with all the beauties of heaven and just all those glorious things that are there. But when I sing this song, I think about Anthony Berger, my old buddy that I've sang with
You
for all
traveled
these
a lot
years.
with Anthony, didn't you?
We toured a lot together. Even aside from the homecoming tour, we did dates together. Leroy and Shorty is what we call each other. And but I sing the I Can Only Imagine, and you can tell that it really strikes a tone with the people, because they've all got loved ones that are already there. And so this song was something I really wanted to do, because I felt like that there was another segment of our Christian audience that needed to hear this song. And so I was hoping that God would bless it and we could share it with even more people. And I think it really worked for all of us.
Did you ever think you'd make it to Carnegie Hall?
No, I actually had to call my mom from the hotel and tell her where I was. I did. I said, Mom, your baby's made it. I'm at Carnegie Hall.
Describe that that feeling of stepping on that stage.
Well, you know what? This place, this auditorium, this has been there for all these years, you know, and you hear of all these major artists that have come across and graced the stage of Carnegie Hall. And I remember years ago, Andre Crouch did a live concert there
Carnegie Hall.
live at Carnegie Hall. That was one of my favorite projects. And so here I was at Carnegie Hall, and it was just breathtaking when we walked in the backstage door and we walked in by the dressing rooms and we walked out on that big Carnegie Hall stage. I thought, I've made it. I've made it. And it was just such a wonderful feeling just to be downtown New York City, there in this wonderful place. And of all the songs that you chose for me to sing in Carnegie Hall was God Bless the USA.
They loved it, didn't they?
They did. They absolutely loved it. And, you know, whenever you do patriotic songs, you really realize, especially with the church folks, you realize, you know, God and country, you know, is something very important to them. And when we did God Bless the USA that night in Carnegie Hall, the roof came off.
What do you want them to say about you when it's done, when it's all done?
Glenn Payne told me years ago, we were actually doing one of the videotapings, and I had a chance to sit down with Glenn and talk with him for a while. And he said, son, if I can give you any piece of advice, he said, listen to me. He said, keep your nose clean. And I knew exactly what he was talking about. And so I would really love for the people to remember me as not only a good singer, or even a great singer, if they want to call me a great singer. I'd love for them to say that. I want them to say he was a good family man, that he was just an all-around good person.
Who believes what he's singing.
Who believes every word of it. Yeah.
Well, Ivan, this has been a joy to talk with you today, and thanks for your honesty. Thanks for your life. You are loved out there, whether you know it or not. People do love you.
And you know what? I love these people. Honestly, I do. It's one of those feelings when you walk out on stage every night, you fall in love with that audience.